Hi everybody, this is ValueTokenized with Masha and Xenia, and as we're slowly getting closer to the end of the year, we have one of our last interviews of 2019, and this episode will be dedicating it to the events that happened in the digital securities industry in this year, the main trends, and we'll be discussing this topic with Luc Falempin, CEO of Tokeny, and Christian Platzer, co-founder and managing partner of Black Manta.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're really excited to discuss the events that happened in this industry this year with you because you have recently started a new synergy, a new partnership that will enable you to create a fully compliant multi-STO platform for Europe. And maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about yourselves, and then we can dive into discussing these main trends. Luc, would you like to start?
You first.
With pleasure. So Tokeny is what we call a tokenization platform, but what we do basically is helping multi-issuers, marketplaces, and financial institutions to issue, manage, and transfer securities on the blockchain. So we are a technology provider, a toolbox for these financial institutions to digitize their securities on the blockchain, on this infrastructure. So we are not an operator; we are a white label platform to do it for real with the right technology. We try to standardize the market on the tech side.
And Christian, can you tell us a little bit more about Black Manta?
Yeah, Black Manta on the other side is basically, in old terms, a financial services institution, or that's what the regulator calls us. So what we do is we use technology of Tokeny and others in terms of KYC providers, AML providers, and we tokenize securities. And our idea is to bring different kinds of securities, different kinds of projects, different asset classes on one platform and match investors with the respective projects. Mm-hmm. That's basically what we do also in old words on a broker-dealer basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and probably before we dive into some of the details of what this will look like, I would like to ask you both what were your favorite use cases for tokenization as a technology, either for fundraising or for ensuring easier management of securities of fund transfers in 2019, either the ones that you created and provided or by some other players?
I think you have a lot of benefits of tokenization, but they are still upcoming. Like the main one is basically this idea of using the blockchain as a global marketplace for transfers, but also for the primary issuance to reach a global audience of investors. If it's digital, it can be global. But liquidity is still not a thing. It's still coming, probably next year. So I think you have different benefits, but for the moment, it's not because you tokenize your shares that you will raise 10 times more money. However, once your securities are tokenized, it's way easier to manage them, to track everything, and to transfer the securities. So for the moment, it's mostly an added value for your investors as an issuer.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and from our perspective, when we look at 2019, we've seen a lot more professionalism on all sides of the market. I mean, you yourselves, you've been on all these conferences in 2018 and you compare them to 2019. Sometimes there are fewer people there, but you have had more in-depth quality discussions, you have more mature projects, and you have basically more senior players in the financial field. That said, there is a lot of interest from the issuer side, so especially real estate, very traditional market. In general, there are lots of players from small single real estate projects to big international developers who are going to tokenization. Of course, the whole startup scene that somehow related to blockchain and fintech and the whole ecosystem, the interest is very high. The interest, I think, is slowly developing on the small and medium-sized businesses. That's something that will definitely take longer, and is a market that needs to be developed over 3 and 5 years. And I think we might see some first interesting projects next year. But in terms of tokenizing a classical established medium-sized business, we haven't seen too much examples so far. And then there is, I think, a lot of things happen in the commodity or fund space that are not super public at the moment, where a lot of professional investors go in. So that's basically how I think the most important spotlights on benchmark.
Yeah, definitely real estate is one of the key industry, and also as it was just explained, when it's standardized securities, it's easier. Equity can be super complicated. You have several clauses in shareholder agreements that are very hard to code. So debt products, it's way easier, it's understandable for the investors, so they are less scared to invest in tokenized securities when it's a debt instrument, whereas equities, they need to understand exactly the whole shareholder agreement and how is it translated in the smart contract. So it will come, but at a later stage, and indeed this year, it was the shift between these small companies who want to raise equity to a more mature and professional environment, where we have financial institutions starting to use the technology on behalf of their clients, and not only to provide the technology, but to package this in a whole service. Otherwise, it's too complicated for the issuer.
And for you both, what was the biggest news of this year? Maybe the biggest advancements in the space? Maybe some new players stepping in, something that technology brought.
Well, I'd like to start. For us, the biggest news that we managed to persuade the German regulator to grant us the license. So that was basically that was also some news for the market, because there's a lot going on in tokenization, and I think in the way we approach it, multi-STO platform, being regulated in a major financial institution, and not in one of the, let's say, smaller European countries, that was definitely a big step for us, and I think also a good signal, let's say, for countries like Germany and others, that they want to really go into that field and getting more comfortable about that. I want to add something to Luc's last answer. I mean, that's also a big thing in 2019 and the year to come. How will legislators provide the supervisory authorities with a framework to deal with tokenized equity? That's definitely something. Some things can be solved through the legal setup, the smart contract, etc. But in the end, we'd expect legislation there, and in major countries like France or Germany, maybe we see it already next year.
Currently, it's impossible to tokenize equity in Germany, or there is a way to do so.
So equity direct, there are certain ways to go around it, but the easiest way to have some kind of debt structure. Also, when you look at, you can tokenize also real estate in an equity way, but then you have some structure in between, and it's not so straightforward as a debt structure, putting in plain on legal terms.
Yes, for equity in most countries, you have the official registry, or you need to declare everything that is happening in your company to the local authorities. So depending on the country, it can be a bit digital, or totally paper-based. So it really depends the country, but it's very hard for the moment to digitize, to automate corporate laws. For example, in Singapore, you have this government authorities, the ACRA, and anytime something happens in your company, you need to fill a form and to send it to ACRA. Every time you have a change of shareholders and so on. So even if we digitize the whole process to transfer the tokens and so on, at the end it will become a nightmare for the issuer if he needs all the time to pay a filling agent to fill these forms and to send them to ACRA. So it goes a bit out of the blockchain. It's good to have this blockchain automating everything and making possible to have thousands of transfers per day. But then we also need this off-chain part where we connect with the local authorities. So depending on the countries, it can be easy or not at all. So we'll see how it goes. And coming back to your question about what was the biggest event this year, I would say that was the Libra tsunami, because every banks were like, oh, it's okay, it's coming, but we have 10 years in front of us. And suddenly they realize they have 1 year in front of them. So most of these big financial institutions realize that blockchain is not just a bullshit thing, but it's really happening because now the technology enables new kind of players to onboard. Banks are working on blockchain technologies for 4 or 5 years on private permission blockchains and so on. They didn't really come out with anything. But now, thanks to public blockchain and so on, you have thousands of developers working on this IT infrastructures every day and making possible the release of new products, very innovative products that can become dangerous for these big financial institutions. And of course, Libra and the worldwide payment system is very scary for banks, even for central banks. So I think it was a shock for the main big banks, and they started to think about blockchain in a different way. And now in every big banks, you have a head of digital assets or that kind of new role. So it's really coming. Of course, it takes time because they are big entities, but I think Libra really made some good waves on the market and will accelerate our businesses.
And Luc, you briefly touched upon the topic of several different jurisdictions, and diving into this more. Tokeny is based in Luxembourg and Black Manta is based in Malta, and both those jurisdictions are known as being very friendly towards digital assets and tokenized securities. And are there any specifics? What are the specifics in working in each of these jurisdictions? And what are the specifics of collaborating in between the two? Christian,
maybe Christian, you want to take it?
Okay, I think you will have to add a couple of things. But first, we are a little bit more complicated. We are small, but we are already in many countries in that way. We originally founded in Luxembourg too. So basically, the domicile of our holding is not so far away from where Tokeny sits. But then we had last year long discussions on where we go with our regulated entity and where we do the actual business. And there we took the decision for Germany. So basically, the key operating entity is based in Germany, and we are dealing with the German financial regulator, BaFin. We are also in Malta, maybe 2 words on Malta, because we had some hopes, or still have some hopes, that the promise of Blockchain Ireland will at some point take off and business development will happen there. As of now, our office at the Maltese Stock Exchange is just a small business development unit. We do our business with Tokeny there, and then we licensing out our business model to the operating entity in Germany and hopefully soon others. But what we've seen so far in Malta was a lot of marketing and a lot of hype and big nice conferences, and we met there. And there is still a big community, but on the regulatory side, things have moved very slowly, to be frankly. So there was a consultation paper with the Maltese regulator MFSA. We talked ourselves to people at the MFSA, and we are in constant contact with people at the stock exchange. But in the end, things are not moving that fast. Now Malta is in a little bit of a difficult political position that might slow it down even further. So it's interesting that jurisdictions like Luxembourg or Liechtenstein managed to move a little bit faster on some things. And now we see also movement in the bigger countries like France and Germany.
Yes, and on our side, so we are based in Luxembourg, but we can operate globally. What we like with Luxembourg is that it's a small ecosystem, but a powerful one. Actually, it's as I usually say, the second country in the world with money under management after the US, but it's way smaller than the US. You have all of the skills you need here in town, and it's a place for securities. Meaning the securities laws are very clear, very efficient, available in 3 different languages. So it's very welcoming for issuers from all around the world. And also Luxembourg has a lot of distribution partnerships. So when you issue from Luxembourg, it's easier to distribute your securities to other countries. Which makes Luxembourg very appealing for issuers and also for service providers. That being said, what we see is that when you are an issuer, you need a local ecosystem. And that's why we really like working with Black Manta and other type of marketplaces, is because they aggregate these ecosystems. At Tokeny, we provide the technology, but we cannot have contacts with regulators all around the world. We cannot have contacts with banks all around the world, with KYC agents all around the world, and so on. So after 2 years of business, we have more than 100 partnerships. But humans are humans, and they want to talk with humans, and they want to deal with humans. So it's good to automate everything. That is our job. But at the end, you have business relationships, so you need these local ecosystems. And so we try to work with these marketplaces. We can aggregate this ecosystem to make it work for the issuer. It becomes turnkey for the issuer. And when they arrive, they know that they will get the tech, they will get the financial structuring, the legal documentation, and so on. And it will be within a framework that is under control, that has been used already, that has been approved by the regulator already, and so on and so forth. So it's very complementary, and it's global. So issuers come and they say, "Oh, from where should I issue my tokens, and where should I distribute?" It's not that simple. I mean, you need to be part of an ecosystem. So why not Luxembourg? It becomes one of the open gate for a lot of Asian projects, for example, to access the European market. But it's not like during the ICO period where you could issue from anywhere because it was just a piece of paper. For securities, you have a lot of different regulations to apply. You need service providers. You need distributors, etc., etc. So you need this complementarity between players, and I think that's why it's very helpful for us to work with Black Manta, because they are implemented in Germany, for example, with their BaFin license, and it's the way to work is clear for the issuer. It's a complete framework.
I mean, if I may add one thing, and you also need to have a continued relationship with the financial regulator. That's not, you get licensed at once and then you say goodbye. And first of all, they want you to report on a regular basis, but with every project, be it, especially when it's open to retail investors, you're in touch with them. So most of the offerings will require prospectus, so you're in touch with the prospectus team of the respective regulator. And we are now, as Black Manta, just in the process where we notify the other countries. So we will have one project in Austria in Q1, where the German regulator notifies the Austrian one what we're allowed to do within the so-called MiFID regime, which regulates basically that part of the financial market in Europe. And then we will talk to the central bank in Ireland and to others, the supervisor in the Netherlands, where we have upcoming projects. That is, as Luc said, I think that's the most important thing, because everything is so virtual in our business. It's tokenized and it's on blockchain. But in the end, when an investment happens, it comes down to a lot of personal relationships. So we need to build up personal relations with institutional professional investors. We are currently talking almost once a week to one of the big private banks, to the wealth managers, etc. So there is a lot of also educational work to do and to make them understand how they fit into that new ecosystem.
Can you tell us a bit more about the platform that you're creating right now, that you partnered together with Tokeny to create? How does it fit in the existing ecosystem, and who are the clients? Who's the target audience that you see that attracts most demand?
Maybe Luc, you go on the platform first, and they say a little bit on the clients.
On our side at Tokeny, we can handle any kind of securities in most of the jurisdictions. As I said before, we provide the toolbox. Then every project will use these tools to onboard investors, to issue the tokens, the on-chain identities, to manage all of these tokens and investors, to provide interfaces where the investors can see their position, participate into the corporate action, and so on. So we provide the tools. It's in white label. You can use the blockchain layer or the API layer or even the white label interfaces. So we work with very different kind of players now. Some specialize in real estate and real estate tokenization, others in equity, others are more large and accept any kind of project. We have some accepting only project in Labuan in Malaysia. So it really depends what you want to do with the technology. Where our role is to basically apply the traditional finance workflows on top of the technology. So as a user of the software, you cannot do much mistakes. Everything is handled. You're guided, and you don't see the complexity of the blockchain. You see the benefits, but not the complexity. So that's really our role as a tech provider. Black Manta has its own positioning, and we think it's a good one. But I would like to explain your targets.
So I think for Black Manta, for us to understand, the most important thing is we want to be a multi-SDO platform. That is, as an issuer, you come to us, and you're within a portfolio of projects. That's also, we have one platform. We've integrated KYC, AML, and other banking integrations, banking APIs, etc. GDPR rules, whatever. We've integrated that once on one multi-platform. And you as an issuer, you don't have to go through the process and basically bring all the different players together, because in the end, you will need more players than just Tokeny to tokenize the asset and to make an issuance. So there are a lot of use cases for big real estate funds, big commodity markets and others to have a single white label solution. But when you're a startup, when you have, like, let's say, a minor raising target of 3 to 5 million, it's already a lot of cost to bring a lot of time to bring everything together for one issuance. And that's basically where we try to tap into. And we want to make the platform itself a legal ecosystem. So as I said in the beginning, there are different kinds of assets, not only startups or SMEs, but also real estate and commodities. And that also brings value to each and every project itself. Let's say, imagine you have 100,000 euros and you want to invest it in real estate. So probably here in Vienna, where I'm sitting currently in Vienna First District, you won't get a lot for 100,000 euros. In some other places, you might get an apartment. But prospectively, hopefully in next year, on our platform, you'll be able to invest 100,000 euros in 10 different real estate projects, if you like, on one platform. And that, I think, brings value to the issuer, but also value to retail and professional investors who want to basically diversify what they invest into tokenized securities.
Mm-hmm. And real estate, you mentioned like this asset class, and actually it's very interesting because real estate has been in the center of the discussion around tokenized securities. And why do you think there is such huge hype with all this news around the consortium of Gulf families tokenizing their properties in the UK, several condominiums in Manhattan, securities tokenizing the like different flats, apartments ahead of Tokyo Olympics? Why is this such a huge topic? Is it easier to tokenize real estate?
Is it only about diversification, so providing additional new opportunities for investors to diversify their assets, or it's also intrigued by the promise of secondary markets, in your opinion?
I think there are different things about real estate. First is very tangible for investors. So is the thing, okay, if I get a digital version of my security, at least I know where is the building. So it brings some confidence. Also, it's very local, so it's usually hard for issuers to reach a global audience of investors for small issuers, and it's definitely liquid. It's an asset class that is very liquid. So the blockchain brings a lot of promises. What we see as well is that you have very big asset managers for real estate. But the cost of a transaction is way too high. So basically, every month they have millions to invest, but not enough time to find the good deals. And because it takes too much time, it's too costly, they cannot invest less than 20 million, for example, in a deal. And on the other side, you have issuers with super good deals, and they're looking for 5, 10, 15 million. And you have a big gap in between. So if, thanks to blockchain, we can reduce the cost of a transaction and we can bring visibility between those both counterparties, we can accelerate the deal flow, we can make more deals. So it opens new markets. So basically, these big asset managers, they see blockchain as a way to bring liquidity, more transferability, but also to access new kind of markets with smaller deals and with smaller investors. So it's basically an easier portfolio management and another type of investors.
And talking about different, Christian, I'm sorry, would you like to add something about real estate? Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask about like what other asset classes do you think, because we briefly touched upon the instruments so that can be tokenized, but apart from real estate and like we can start talking about the like prognosis for the next year. What are other asset classes do you think will be most like highly prioritized in tokenization, and why?
So I'd say there is definitely, for similar reasons like in real estate, a lot of interest in the commodity markets, and we will try to come up with interesting projects there, and that basically showcase what can be done there. That's also a kind of market that's highly international, and they will tap into that what's been established now with the first real estate projects. Then we talked earlier about Luxembourg. I think Luxembourg will be one of the places where the tokenization of funds will take off within the next couple of years. And there's also a couple of projects where we'd like to go public with throughout the next year. That's definitely a big one. Again, coming back to the other question, when we look at startups and businesses, we will see hopefully soon some movement from legislators that will make it more easy to tokenize equity in the real way. And in the end, it will be both from a company's perspective or real estate perspective, the most innovative, or let's say the revolution will basically come through measures bringing land registry or company registry on blockchain. And that's a lot. These are very, very old bodies, very well old authorities that have been operating in some countries for hundreds of years. And it will take them, I think it took them a decade to adopt emailing and handing in company documents to a scan rather than a fax or other stuff. So once they've realized advantages of handling their daily work on a blockchain basis, they'll be able to interface with what we do and what others do. It will be that will be basically the complete game changer. And again, Malta is talking there about something. I think the greatest news would be also for 2020 if we had one country where the land registry or the company registry goes on blockchain. That would be a big innovative step for 2020.
Luc, and what are you looking forward to in 2020?
I think one of the main change will be that financial institutions will start working on public blockchain for real. Because for years they tried to control the blockchain nodes, to work on permission blockchains, to control the environment, and now they're starting to understand that the main benefit is interoperability. So you have no ways to work on public blockchain, but to bring compliance and control on top of this public blockchain. So you benefit from this shared IT infrastructure between the participants of the network, but you control your assets on this permissionless blockchain. And it's actually a real shift for these financial institutions. But we saw it in the last few months. Now you have big bonds and debt instruments issued on the public blockchain. So for the moment, they issued on the public blockchain and they don't give the address, so nobody can see anything. But we do have the technology to have this compliance, and for this compliance, and to bring control for the different third parties, different counterparties. So I think it will be a big shift this year. We have some very nice project to announce in that way, actually. And also the cash will be tokenized this year. And it actually is very important if we want to reach this liquidity, because on the blockchain, you need two tokens, one to represent the security and one to represent the cash. If the cash is not tokenized in the proper way, it doesn't work. I mean, you lose half of the value. You cannot use the blockchain as a settlement layer and so on. And now, thanks to Libra, thanks to the Chinese government and others, you have a lot of initiatives in many countries to issue a digital coin. So it can be commercial money or not. There's a different kind of project. But it's a big missing point today in the industry. It's the tokenized cash. So it's not really a problem of technology. Tokeny could issue a stable coin tomorrow in 1 hour, but it's a problem of credibility. Yeah. Who holds the funds? Who is the operator of this stable coin? So you already have some stable coins at the market, but they are permissionless tokens. So it's very complicated to apply the compliance. It's only at the entrance and at the exit, not in between. Now you can control every transfer of these tokens. So, for example, if you use the T-Rex protocol to tokenize cash, every transfer of cash is under control. So, if you use the blockchain as a global marketplace, you can track securities automatically in a few minutes, and the cash, the counterparty, the cash in a few minutes as well. So basically, you solve a lot of problems in the industry where you have thousands of people calling each other, sending fax, sending emails to know where is the money, where is my security, how it changed from one custodian to another, but I already used the cash, it didn't arrive yet, but it's already in collateral for something else. It's a big nightmare. With the technology, everything happens in a few minutes, and you always know who holds what. So we need these cash coins. And the governments, the regulators understood that, and now they are launching some initiative to RFPs basically to make it happen. So I think in the next 6 months I will see some big announcements on that side, and it will help a lot the whole industry.
If I may add one very German-specific thing in that regard for 2020, in Germany there will be a new law on crypto custody in place that will have a huge impact on the market, where we have now a series of players lined up to apply for the respective BaFin license, and we will see those players over the course of the next quarters, first and second quarter in 2020. And basically what's happening there is new kind of depot banks are created. So the whole private banking sector, wealth management sector, will be introduced a new form of player that can deal with tokenized securities. And these players will then help institutional investors to go into these securities and to put them into their portfolio. And whilst in 2018, many blockchain startups were struggling to get a bank account with one of the established banks. Now, this year, us, Black Manta, we got chocolate from bankers after we received our BaFin license and the respective congrats card. So I think the whole, and my co-founder Alex and I, we had a series of talks now over the last weeks with private bankers in that field, where you see, okay, the interest is really growing there, and they get the feeling they have to also educate their own institutions and educate their own staff and create openness, because this new custody players will be in the end competition for established banks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. This was probably our last question. So thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your plans and your insights for the next year.
Thank you for having us, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas from Vienna.
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year, happy Merry Christmas.